everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, in March of 2020, the virus came and changed everything. And it didn't just shut down, film productions all over the world. It also led to hard lockdowns and sometimes more soft lockdowns. And in Sweden, where we didn't have any lockdowns whatsoever, except, for some restrictions of, when alcohol was to be served and stuff like that, we watched in bewilderness of, how the world was changing around us. And we were like, what? This is stupid. I was always against the idea of lockdowns because I thought that lockdown was a bit like, going on a very strict diet. Eventually, you are going to start eating again, and when you do that, you not only, gain a lot of weight again, but you also lose all the muscle mass that you have lost during the time when you had your, your diet and stuff like that. That was, my opinion about it. I don't know whether or not I was correct about that or not, but I do know one thing. I understood why, some people got really frustrated about it, and I can understand how, people were, writing scripts about it. And in May of 2020, they started production on Songbird, and the script that was written got, the attention of Platinum Dunes, Michael Bay's production company, and they went into, kind of rushed production, and the movie came out early 2021 or something like that. And when I heard, about the premise for this movie, they said that this was one of the worst movies they'd ever seen. It was a way of cashing in on people's fear of, the lockdowns and the virus and stuff like that. And I got really, really scared for this one because I thought this is going to be one of the worst movies I have ever seen, I thought. But this is not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's not even the worst movie about COVID-19. The worst movie about COVID-19 is most definitely Glacier, which was a Swedish movie that came out very late 2021, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, which I've also done a review of on this channel. So my expectations were so low that I actually doesn't think this movie is that bad. It's horrendously outdated, but it is not bad. So let's find out what this movie is about and how outdated it is, shall we? This is Songbird. The year is 2023 and COVID-19 has evolved into COVID-23 and is now deadlier than ever and more contagious than ever. Whoever wrote this movie and whatever numbskull went through it and okayed the script has apparently never read any articles from, Life or Science or anything like that, because if a virus gets deadlier, it becomes less contagious, and if it becomes more contagious, it becomes less deadly. Because that is how viruses work, but you do you, man. And this movie takes place in Los Angeles, and essentially, the entire state of California has become just a big police state. We never get to find out how this world actually works because they didn't have the time, nor did they have the budget to tell that story, but we'll get to that in a second. We never actually find out what happens, in the rest of the world. We just find out what happens, inside of Los Angeles. And we have Nico, who is our main character. He is one of the immune ones. Therefore, he has, this fancy yellow bracelet that allows him to essentially go wherever he wants to go and do whatever he wants to do, while the rest of humanity sits in, their houses and do whatever they're doing. My guess is porn. Lots and lots of porn. But, he drives around and delivers these packages and stuff like that. And he's in love with this girl called Sarah. But of course, they cannot be together because of the stupid virus and the stupid lockdown. And he also sort of befriends this rich family. And they're trying to basically create an underground market for fake bracelets or something like that. They also may be in cahoots with this garbage truck lunatic played by Peter Stormare, who also is one of the immune ones, because the sanitation guys and the garbage truck guys, they are the ones who takes care of the sick people. They're essentially some kind of a COVID Gestapo guys, essentially. If you're sick, you're taken to the Q zone. Exactly what happens in the Q zone is unclear. We never get to see it, but apparently it's some kind of a quarantine thing. What happens after that, I don't know. It is sort of kind of a little bit implied that I think we are supposed to think that they're killed or something like that, but we never get a good answer for that. So we also have a couple of other stories that take place at the same time because, you know, Demi Moore's daughter, Demi Moore is, by the way, the woman in this rich family, and, you know, she's, you know, trying to care for her and hope that, you know, she gets better and stuff like that. And we also have the dad who has an affair with this girl who wants to be an artist or something like that. And she also has, you know, these Skype calls and Zoom calls with this crippled war veteran and, you know, doing shit on YouTube and stuff like that. And I was thinking, what the fuck does this have to do with this boring ass story of Nico and Sarah, who have, you know, about as much personality as gherkins? So they are trying to shoehorn in a lot of stuff in an 81-minute long movie done on a $1 million budget that is going to tell us about an entire new world that, you know, is going to exist in the future in the, you know, year of our Lord 2023. And they can't really do that in a good way. It is not a very interesting story, it's not a very interesting concept, and we don't have any interesting or fascinating visual storytelling that helps us tell this story. There is also a problem that we have no good actors in this one. Demi Moore is struggling with her lines. She's probably the best actor in this entire movie. The rest of them is pretty damn lame. But the movie still has fascinating ideas, and watching it reminded me of how I felt in March, April of 2020, when it felt like the entire world was going to the shitters. There are fascinating aspects of this world, and there were things that they could have done, but they chose not to do that, mainly because they didn't have time to do it. The best character in the entire movie is probably Peter Stormare, because he hams it up so much and he's so fucking ridiculous. But here's the thing, that even though this movie has a lot of downsides to it, it was still not as terrible as I thought it was, because there were these moments where, you know, an actual good movie kind of shined through, and I think that you potentially could have done an interesting movie surrounding this concept if you would have had, you know, good actors, a better budget, a longer runtime, and competent people in front of and behind the camera. Luckily for us, Michael Bay at least isn't the director of this one. God knows how this movie would have looked if he was, you know, responsible for everything, but his fingerprints are all over this movie. The movie ended in boring, bland and confusing fashion, and when it was all said and done, I was like, okay, that was it. The thing was that I had been, you know, told that this movie was going to be so horrible, and that the story of this movie was going to be so bad, and that the concept for this movie was so ludicrous that I thought that I was going to see something that was a really, really horrible movie. But instead, it was just a little lame, and it was just a little bit uncomfortable to watch sometimes, because this is essentially a way of cashing in on a pandemic and people actually dying, which made it a little bit icky to watch. Not quite as icky as watching, let's say, Wolves at the Door, who is still one of the most uncomfortable watches I've ever done. Fuck you, Wolves at the Door, you're the fucking worst. But this is still not a terrible movie. It's lame, it's incredibly outdated, and it is a bit ludicrous sometimes, and it has about 100 plot holes, and it doesn't hold up to any form of scrutiny. Even if you know, accept this ludicrous concept that they're presenting to you, this still didn't work. Is it one of the worst movies I've ever seen? No. Is it as bad as I thought it was? No. Was it the worst movie about the pandemic? Absolutely not. This is still just a pretty lame movie that doesn't have any real upsides to it. If you have any chance of missing it, keep missing it, because you ain't missing anything that is, you know, so bad that it is good, or so bad that you can, you know, throw things at the TV or anything like that. It's just a little bit lame. And as I said, the most outdated movie I think I've ever seen. The acting was lame, the characters were even lamer, and the cool concept that they envisioned that they were going to have never really materialized. It was bad, but it was not horrible. Expectations is very important. If I would have had no expectation on this whatsoever, do I think that this movie would have gotten like 14 or 15 rating? Probably. But now I thought this movie was going to be so horribly bad that I actually ended up giving this movie 29 points, and I don't think I'm being unfair. I think this movie is not very good. There are tons of problems with it. It's boring. They try to shoehorn in a bunch of stories in a movie that only runs 81 minutes on a $1 million budget. This was born to fail, but it was not as terrible as I thought it was. There were these moments that were more than decent, and there was a couple of heartfelt moments that I thought worked, but most of it was very, very lame and very, very underwhelming. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.